Hi there, and welcome back to our last episode of English Book on TV. We are your hosts, as usual. I am Mr. Darrow.
I'm Miss Samantha, and today we'll be discussing White Fang by Jack London.
And this is for grades 7, 8, and 9.
Let's begin.
Let's have a look at the agenda first. We have the vocabulary, which we will look at, then a look at the author, and maybe a summary of the book.
Of course. Then after that, we'll look at the characters, the setting, and some main themes before concluding with a revision of what we learned and giving you our last homework assignment before summer vacation.
That has been fun.
It has been. So now let's look at our first vocabulary word, and that is natural. Now, natural describes something that comes from nature or something that you're born with.
Our next word is native. It's an adjective. It describes someone who is originally from the place they live in.
Next, we have violence. Now, violence is behavior and actions using strong physical force meant to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something.
From there, we have transition. Now, transition is the process of changing from one thing into another.
Next, we have the noun longing. And longing means really, really wanting something.
And if you are longing for something, you'll need a lot of our next word, patience. And this is a noun. It is the ability to accept delays, problems, or difficulties without becoming annoyed or angry or anxious.
Now, after patience, we have the word trust. And trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone. Some synonyms for trust are confidence and faith.
And our last word is loyal. It is showing firm and constant support to a person. Some synonyms are faithful and true-hearted. Make
sure to keep all of these vocabulary words in mind throughout our lesson and for when you read the book yourself. Now, it's time for us to talk about the author. And you might remember this author from a few weeks ago when we talked about another one of his books, The Call of the Wild.
Indeed, it is Jack London, an American from the state of California, born in the late 19th century and dead by the first decades of the 20th century. Now, he is one of the first authors to achieve worldwide celebrity and make a lot of money from selling his books. Now, if you remember from last time, I think we mentioned he loved animals, which plays a part in this book again, reading and traveling.
Yes. Now, we also wanted to make a point about Jack London's writing style. He really wanted to show animals in a realistic way, so he didn't give them human emotions or human thoughts. What he did was focus on their actions and their natural animal instincts.
Yep.
And let's see those instincts come into play now with our summary.
Let's get to it. Now, this book tells the life of a wolf dog named White Fang, starting from his early days in the wild forests where he enjoys following his natural instincts and exploring the new animal world around him.
After that, White Fang finds himself in the care of a Native American man named Gray Beaver. And this is where White Fang first learns how to behave in the domestic human world. He learns that humans can help him and that he can have a great relationship with them.
However, a cruel man named Beauty Smith buys White Fang at this point and forces him to participate in violent dogfights. Here, White Fang learns that not all humans are good. Even though White Fang wins all but one of the fights, He is hurt both mentally and physically by the cruelty that he experiences in these fights. Now, during his last fight, in fact, he's almost killed.
But luckily, a kind Californian man named Weedon Scott rescues White Fang from this horrible situation. Over time, by showing kindness, patience, and love, Weedon Scott earns White Fang's trust. White Fang loves Scott, and he's willing to give up his natural animal instincts for him. He follows Scott back to California, where he's eventually accepted into Scott's family home as a highly beloved house pet, happily spending the rest of his days with them. I just love that story, and I think it's such a great opposite story compared to the other Jack London book that we talked about. Right in The Call of the Wild, we see the main character go from the domestic to the wild, whereas here in White Fang, we see the main character go from the wild to the domestic.
Excellent point. Mm-hmm. It is true.
It is. And speaking of our main characters, let's move on to our characters of White Fang.
Yes, let's start with the protagonist of the book, and that is White Fang. He is mostly wolf, not just dog, and he's got the best traits of both. So he's smarter, stronger, and faster than dogs. This makes him an uneasy fit with the humans because they can see that he's part wolf. But when shown kindness, patience, and love, he becomes a very loyal pet. Now he sees violence and love, both of them, in both the wild animal world and the human world. But in the end, he chooses the human world where he experiences the most comfort and kindness.
Yes. So now let's take a look at that human world with the first character that White Fang encounters who's a human, and that's Gray Beaver. Now, Gray Beaver is a Native American chief who is really White Fang's first owner and his first introduction to the human world. He's firm but kind to White Fang. Gray Beaver is neither as cruel nor as loving as some of the other humans that White Fang encounters. But he's still mostly good to White Fang, giving him everything that White Fang needs, like food and shelter. Though White Fang is still torn between the wild animal world and the domestic human world when he's with Gray Beaver.
From that character, we move to a much worse character. Beauty Smith is his name. He's ugly inside and outside, according to the book. He's a cruel, violent man, and he forces White Fang to go into the field of dog fighting. He's only concerned about money, of course, and he doesn't care about White Fang at all. He knows that White Fang is partially wolf, and he uses that to his advantage. He knows that that means that White Fang can probably fight better and win his fights. He, in fact, shows White Fang that the human world can be as violent as the animal world.
He is a truly horrible man. So let's move on from him and get into a much better man, who is Weedon Scott. Now, he is the kind and loving young man who rescues White Fang from Beauty Smith. He earns White Fang's trust through patience and kindness, and he really does more than just provide White Fang with a place to sleep and food and water. He gives White Fang love, real love, for the first time, which transforms White Fang from this wild animal into a wonderful pet. So Scott really represents the kindness and warmth of humanity. But kind of moving away from the warmth, let's get into something very cold with the setting of White Fang.
Indeed. Let's look at the when first. Now again, like the last time we spoke about Jack London, this is about the Klondike gold rush of 1897. If you remember, gold was found in the Klondike region in the Yukon, way up north, and about 100,000 people went there all of a sudden looking for gold. and you can imagine the chaos and the dirt and the noise of the place. Now, the thing to focus on for this book is that these men would have needed entertainment, and that's where these dogfights come in.
What a horrible, horrible form of entertainment. But let's move now to the where. And that was the Yukon and Northwestern Territories in what is now Alaska and Canada. Now, this was a harsh, freezing climate that was very difficult to live in. Though it was home to many different Native American tribes. But with the gold rush, Americans and Canadians also went there. So there was a real mix of cultures, societies, and ideas, which we really see with how these different humans interact with White Fang. And we do end the story, though, in a much nicer place of warm and sunny California. And it's an easier life, of course, in California compared to the Yukon. But it is still a difficult adjustment for White Fang, as change is often difficult, especially when we move from the wild world that White Fang was in to a fully domestic one. And that brings us perfectly now to our main themes, Daryl.
Yes, indeed. And we have one good one. Domestic longings versus one's natural instincts fighting to get out. As you can see from our summary and from the when and the where, White Fang is torn between the animal world that he really belongs to and the human world that he likes a lot. And they seem to be two different worlds on the surface.
Yeah, you're right. And we're going to explore this theme through White Fang's relationship with the different humans.
First, with the Native Americans, he runs away from them initially because he wants his freedom. But he comes back because he misses the people, other dogs, and the food and shelter provided to him.
Next, when he is with Beauty Smith, White Fang actually wants the domestic life, but he is forced to act on his natural instincts during these fights. He is forced to be a wolf for human gain. And that's very confusing for White Fang because he must act wild while in the domestic world. So it's a really strange blending of these two worlds.
From there, we move back to Scott, actually. Now, White Fang genuinely loves Scott and will do anything to be with him, even acting against his own instincts in doing so. And it's actually Scott's kindness, patience, that gives White Fang the chance to kind of change internally.
That's so true. So we see that White Fang learns that both the human world and the wild animal world can be violent and can be loving. But in the end, he chooses the place where he will find the most love. And I think that's an incredible theme to discover. But there are so many more for you to find when you read White Fang yourself. For now, we are almost out of time, so let's review what we discussed. First, we talked about our author, Jack London. Then we went on to the summary of White Fang's transition from the wild to the domestic world. After that, we looked at our characters, White Fang and the three humans in his life. Then the cold setting of the Yukon during the gold rush. And finally, our main theme of domestic longing versus natural instincts.
This will be a good time to go over the vocabulary words from the beginning. Now, I'll read them out once more. Natural, native, violence, a transition, longing, patience, trust, and loyal.
And that brings us now to our homework. We've loved hearing from all of you, and even though this is your last lesson and summer's right around the corner, please be sure to answer our question for you.
Here is the question. Which do you think is more violent, the animal world or the human world, and why?
So send us your answers to englishbookeducation.co.uk/homework. And we also just want to say thank you so much for joining us, not only today, but these last few months. I know Daryl and I have had such a wonderful time getting to rediscover some of our favorite books with all of you.
Indeed, and one message for the summer, keep reading, keep hitting those books, as we've discovered over these past episodes. There's a lot to be learned from just even a simple look into books, and so we want you to keep reading for the rest of your lives.
We really do. So be sure to check out bookshop.ge to help you read even more this summer. Again, thank you all so much, and we will see you all next academic year. Bye, everyone.
Have a great summer.